There we are. Mayor Dufty, I presume?
Yeah, right. I bet you tell that to everybody it's not Ed Lee.
So far,
not going.
Not Mayor Dufty.
That's right. 3 minutes to introduce and then Q&A after that. How we want to play it.
Great.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody. How many folks were at the other forum at the Cultural Center? Oh, so good crossover. Okay. All right. I won't repeat myself. So the things that I'm proud of, growing up in New York City, growing up in a musical household with a lot of jazz musicians around me, and so having an appreciation for how difficult it is to be an artist. Representing the Castro, wanting to have an anchor that was cultural so that people who come to visit the Castro could understand what makes that neighborhood special, what the history is. And I think most of you know that we had a gay and lesbian GLBT historical society, but it's down the street above the Cartoon Museum and wasn't really well visited and wasn't really a destination. And so through grit and determination and my usual scrappy style, and with some help from Tom Amiano, we got money over a couple of years, and I pummeled away to get some sponsorships and below market rent. And so we've had now a 2,000 square foot space. It's an exhibition space. It's now a destination space where events are now being held, which I think is really significant and important in providing something that didn't exist there. And I like to speculate that in a few years it's going to be a great gay date place, for teenagers, who want to go someplace and want to go in the Castro and someplace fun to go on a Sunday afternoon. I was Tom's first co-sponsor on Prop H, the Public Education Enrichment Fund. I worked really hard to keep the Republicans from going negative on it, and I worked hard, and I think you all know how much I admire Tom's leadership and what he's done. But having an arts education master plan, having a school district that places that as a priority, I think is really essential. And I've continued to work. I'm a huge advocate for School for the Arts, not just to be a standalone campus in the Civic Center, but to be a hub of arts education. Some of the arts groups that I'm most strongly associated with as a fundraiser or collaborator are Baycat, Loco Bloco, the Chinese Historical Society, the Gay Men's Chorus. I strongly opposed when Supervisor Mercarimi offered an amendment to reduce by $800,000 spending on the arts from Grants for the Arts. I recognize he was focused on the bigger arts institutions, but I didn't see it as being a good thing, and it wasn't a good thing. I've been a strong advocate with Mona Karen to get murals in our district, and I think that they've been great. And I'm always trying to figure out how to get more arts activity going. You might recall that at the Randall Museum we moved the Bufanos while Valencia Gardens was being built, and then the parents at Randall didn't want to move them, but that was the wrong thing because they needed to go back because it was very significant that we had Bufanos at public housing, and I was able to get the PUC to fund an installation that is going to be opening in the next few weeks at the Randall that combines art and the mission of the PUC, which I think is an exciting thing. And I think no one in city government has fought harder than I have over the past decade for nightlife. I heard David refer to it, but you ask anybody that owns a club or a venue in this town, and they know my name, and they know they can call me if they've got a hassle with the cops. They can call me if the fire department is squeezing them the wrong way. They can call me if they've got problems with the ABC. And I think there's an inextricable link between the arts and nightlife and people going out at night, which I think is not happening enough. The last thing, if you'll indulge me for 30 seconds, is I think anybody running for mayor in this town needs to have a black agenda. And I know that Alma's involved in your organization, and Tony, I appreciate the community you come from, but I grew up in the black community, and everybody running for mayor can tell you what's wrong in this town, but I just ask you to look at them and ask them, how many black people have you hired? What's your involvement? What are you doing to build this community that is under 4%? And my politics may not be what you like, but I'm going to sit here and tell you the truth, that it is a disgrace what has happened here, the diminution of black businesses in this town, the abandonment of the black middle class because they can't find a way to have their kids go to a school that's a quality school, or their kids not to get shot. And I just want to say to you that no matter who gets elected mayor, I hope that you, as being individuals that care about cultural expression, the diversity of that expression, and the seminal role of black Americans in creating culture in America, and we got to do something better. because these kids are growing up in a horrible environment where all they think about is that they're going to be shot and killed by the time they're 30. And I've gone to the funerals, I can tell you about them, you know, but I'll shut up. Deborah.
To that issue, one of the things that the Arts Task Force identified was the disparity and the inequality of funding, which I think Ross was trying to do in a failed sort of way.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the granting goes to organizations that do not serve diverse communities, and the grants distributed don't equal our diversity as a city.
Mm-hmm.
That is really exampled in the funding cuts that are out in Bayview Hunters Point, where hardly anything. Bayview Opera House is almost the only organization out there funded under grants for the arts. So cultural equity grants through the Arts Commission were created to try and deal with that issue. Part of the problem is the structure of our infrastructure, that you have the Arts Commission, you have grants for the arts, you have the War Memorial, you have fine arts, and not any one person is responsible to the arts element of the master plan, which is exactly what you said, that we're supposed to encourage the diversity. So how would you deal with that?
Well, from sort of a Black leadership standpoint, I plan to, on a monthly basis, convene different stakeholders from different elements of the community, the religious community, the nonprofit community, the cultural community, the business community, because I think we just have to kind of sit down and focus on things. Now, specifically as it relates to the Bayview, I think that what we've got to do is focus in on some of the organizations that really are doing things. And so I think BayCat is a very important organization. I don't know if you've been there to see them. I was just there at an event last week. They have a rich mixture, because the Bayview is not Black anymore. It's 21% Latino, it's 21% Asian Pacific Islander. And so BayCat melds art and technology, and I think that what we've got to do is pick groups like that and Hunters Point Family Foundation and really go in and then require that our larger institutions, what are they doing in terms of audience development? Now, I have seen good things from the major institutions like the ballet and the symphony in terms of reaching out to a diverse group of young people through the schools and engaging them, but I would welcome the involvement of arts leaders like yourself and others, but I think we've got to go in. I want to create life campuses at our public housing developments. 45% of our public housing residents live at the Big Four. You know what they are. It's Potrero Hill, it's Hunters Point, it's Alice Griffith, and it's Sunnydale. And rather than having these places be wastelands where negative activity rules the day, why can't we get each of our universities to adopt one of the Big Four and go in and offer programming, arts, it may be yoga, it may be, it may be recovery things. We partner with Walden House, but I think we've got to take, again, we've got to go to where we have people and stabilize these individuals. And in the homeless arena, everybody recognizes you just don't put somebody in a room, right? You got to have supportive housing, you got to have services. Why do we think that we can go into public housing and give somebody a key and somehow that's the answer? It's not. You've got to provide a rich array of services, and I think that the arts, not only do they stimulate young people who otherwise might not go to school, but I think that what we've seen in Mid-Market. I mean, my headquarters was at 6th and Market. I saw what was going on doors down from me with the arts, with people whose lives were very fragmented coming in and having that ability to create, being central to kind of being together.
Do you support the concept of bringing all of the agencies, the Grants for the Arts, Arts Commission, fine arts museums together under one authority to really better coordinate?
I think it requires a stakeholder process, but I would be willing to shepherd us towards that direction, because we've got to masterfully do it in a way that, because you've seen this, there have been efforts before that then it becomes, it's an us versus them situation. And so, but I do think that we can do much better. I'm disappointed that, from my standpoint, it seems as though Luis's tenure was not successful, and we can't afford to do that. I mean, one of the things you know about me, for better or worse, I'm not looking outside of San Francisco to hire people to run city departments. I think that is a huge mistake that we make. Everybody looks better 2,500 miles away, right? I'd date anybody that lives in New York. They look great being there. And then you come here and you got to find a place to live, you got to get your spouse a job, you got to find a school for your kids, you got kids. It's crazy. And then you get a commission, and it is, whether it's Nat Ford or Luis Cancel, it is not a recipe for success as far as I'm concerned. I think we have to elevate people within our city departments, because then it sends the message that you too can be the department head someday.
That cannot be done.
So I do want to say about America's Cup, one thing I want to say to you is that I had an interesting experience. I went to go see John Stump, who's the CEO of Wells Fargo, and it was kind of fun for me because I'll never have a $500,000 bank account, but I have one right now at Wells Fargo, so it was kind of, I felt special. And I sat down with him, and what was interesting to me was that he talked about the fact that Mayor Newsom, who I respect in so many ways, had never gone to see the CEOs who haven't moved their jobs to either San Ramon or Phoenix, that they haven't gone to have a conversation and to say thank you or to say what's on your mind. And what was interesting to me was that he says, and you know, they look at me as if I'm an ATM for America's Cup. They're coming at me for money, money, money. And he said, you know when I'm interested? They don't have any interest in whether I or the talent of this institution can help make the investments that we do around America's Cup sustainable and last beyond them. And so I just say that to say you wouldn't kind of think that John Stump has the same agenda that you do in respect of like you wanting people come here and to go into the neighborhoods for a cultural experience. But that's what I'm about, is about that level of collaboration, because I think he would be more turned on to talk with you about the vision that you have than he is in sitting down at a table with somebody from Louis Vuitton that's going to tell him why, you know, a $1 million investment gets them this picture in an ad versus a $3 million investment. And they're going to raise buckets of money, there's no question. But I do think that the corporate community here, they're not falling over themselves to write these checks. And so I think that you have some leverage with them, because ultimately you're a longer customer than they're going to have from America's Cup. These folks are going to go to Valencia, wherever they're going to go. They're going to be gone in 3 years. And so I just say you might not think that they're your allies in this, but I kind of think that in a strange way they kind of are, because just like you don't feel like you're being asked about how to enhance the experience beyond just the nuts and bolts of people getting to a pier and seeing boats in the water, I don't think that they feel that their ability to create sustained customers and investments, jobs, and those things that they want, that's not on the table for them. So I'd be happy to make suggestions about people to talk to, but I think it's an interesting way to look at. You wouldn't think about that.
Yeah,
Great,
so who
thank
are the
you.
people? Who are the people to talk to?
I think John Stump, I'd be happy to set you up to talk with him.
I mean,
and
who is the coordinating person for the planning?
for the America's Cup?
Yeah.
That is a
Besides-
train wreck.
Yeah.
It's a total
There's
train
several
wreck.
of them.
So there's a $30 million tail. That's the city people. That's like Mark Buell and Kerry McClellan.
right.
Then there's like a $300 million
Michael
deal,
Burke.
which is like 2 New Zealanders that drop in and out, and these folks don't like each other. You know, there's politics and everything. But I think the bottom line is that the San Francisco businesses that are being asked for big checks, they don't like the way they're being approached in this thing, because they're being approached as if they're just an ATM card to stick in there. And I think that if
It'd be
you can
great.
help them have an agenda, I think it would be a really fun thing to do.
Let's do it.
Yeah, if it's possible, 2 questions, and they're kind of related. But well, one on the America's Cup. What happens after the America's Cup? Is there any room for the facilities that are built up there specifically for that event to be available as public gathering spaces, as arts facilities, as affordable workshops, or something along the lines of that on the port properties after the America's Cup is over? And then segueing into, I believe your campaign offices are on Market Street, and I wanted to see if you have any insight into what might be some of the best policies to advocate for and helping mid-market become an arts and creative zone.
So I'm going to start with the second question first. I sponsored legislation around student housing. So Boston showed me some good things, and that they have built 10,000 units of student housing over a decade. And I think for most students, Craigslist is like the housing vehicle. And in my opinion, I think a fair number of rental 3 bedrooms and such are gobbled up by students, so there's not as much family rental housing as there could be. So what they did in Boston was they took out the affordable requirement, recognizing that students by their nature are generally low income or qualify. And so that makes it easier to build housing. So one of the things that I've really been focused on is trying to get student housing built in the mid-market area. One example is there's been an effort to try and entice the Academy of Art, megalopolis, into buying the AAA building, for example, because they wouldn't have to do the set-aside. They could create student housing there. And I think also anchoring something in mid-market would be great, because I think art students would love to live in a neighborhood like Mid-Market, and I think would bring, you know, some stability and strength to the neighborhood. So that's one of the things I think. I mean, I spent several months at 6th and Market. I'll tell you, I was very comfortable. Again, I grew up in New York. I grew up around a lot of heroin, a lot of, you know, dysfunction. I felt very at home there. I don't even know how to describe it, but
I did too.
I felt really at home there. But nobody would come and volunteer. It was crazy. I couldn't get people in that headquarters to save my life. And so, you know, sometimes you have to admit failure in things. And so for me, you know, I think Amy Cohen's doing a good job, and I'd like to kind of support that and continue to do things. Where will the Ruth Asawa campus? There've been some interest about locations on Golden Gate, and I'll tell you this much: I'm not going to leave office as mayor unless they take me out early, and not get a school for the arts built there. On the stuff about America's Cup, I don't really know. I mean, so much has happened in the past few months since I've been gone from the board. I don't know it like I should. I think everything you're saying should happen. I just don't know the latest and greatest. I mean, right now, it seems like it's all about the money right now, which is why it's a good time for you to get in there and kind of get higher up on the agenda. Great seeing everybody. Thank you so much for welcoming me. Thanks so much.
Okay, take care.
Early on.